One thing you do need when you're messing about with antennas is a soldering iron. It's quite amazing how much you actually use one when you start to put plugs on and connect cables up and so forth. And you really need to spend a decent amount of money on a soldering iron, not these really cheap ones. I mean, don't go over the top, but get yourself a reasonable soldering iron. I think that B&Q do a range, which I've used. I think RS do a range as well. A bit more expensive, but I suppose you get you get what you paid for. But you will need a soldering iron if you're messing around with antennas. Yeah, I love the smell of solder. It takes me back to the time when I was first licensed, many years ago. Anyway, in previous videos I've talked about the small garden, but now I want to move on to a couple of antennas that I've used quite a lot in my years on the air, both of which are very effective and both of which can fit into a fairly small garden. The first one I want to talk about is the half-size Father RV with loading coils to also make it resonate on 80 meters. Now let me just explain this. I'll put it up on the screen now. You can see the basic idea. It's a half-size G5 RV, and you've got loading coils at the end which serve to act as resonators on 80 meters, but because of the inductance of those coils, they're quite high inductance, they act as chokes as well, so they completely or almost completely isolate the antenna on its design frequency range from 40 through to 10 meters, but adds 80 meters when you fire 80 meters into it, because those coils, instead of becoming chokes on 80 meters, they become loading coils. Now, there is an advantage actually in this, because the antenna is not affected except on 80 meters. It does give you the opportunity of adjusting the length of the resonator wires just beyond those coils so that you get a good match on 80 meters. Now normally on a full-size G5 RV, everything's a compromise including 80 meters. But with the half-size version with these loading coils, you can actually trim the antenna so you get quite a good match on 80 meters without upsetting any of the other bands. In fact, I've got one of these coils here. Right, here we are. This is the EL40XC, and it's a coil that we've sold for many years, designed basically to enable you to operate a half-size G5 RV on 80 meters. Very simple, and the length of wire you need beyond it is around about probably about 2 meters of wire. Now you can have this half-size 5RV as an inverted V as well, or you can have the antenna almost horizontal and just drop those resonator wires down vertically beyond those choke coils. Either way, it works extremely well. But one thing you will have noticed is that the antenna is terminated in a 4:1 Balun, and one here, this is the Balun that I use. It's made by MFJ. It's actually a very nice Balun indeed. I've used one of these for many years. It'll handle full legal power and more without any problems at all. Got a couple of nice ceramic insulators on one end and SO239 and earth point on the other end. So that's the unit that I thoroughly recommend. I know there's been some discussion about whether it should be a 4:1 or 1:1 Balun. Well, I can only tell you one. I've always used the 4:1 Balun, and I found no problems at all. The ladder line I use, by the way, is this stuff here, and it's very light. And I weighed it actually just to see how much it weighed. There is 60 foot here on this coil. And let me just show you how much it weighs. Well, here we are out in the kitchen, and put them on the scales. Set the scales to 0. The scales are registered just over 1 kilo, for around about 60 foot of 450 ohm ladder line. So that's one answer for an antenna for a small garden that works quite well on 80 meters through to 10 meters. I've used it quite a lot. It's great. So let's move on to another alternative, and this really is something which I've used extensively in my ham radio time, and it always works, and it doesn't require much in the way of building, putting together, etc. And that is basically a dipole or doublet fed with 450 ohm ladder line. 450 ohm ladder line has got an extremely low loss, and it really doesn't matter what VSWR is on that line, you're going to lose nothing at all on the HF bands. So rather than go down the 5RV route and struggle to get a low VSWR and worry about it, I would say that a lot of you could do a lot worse than simply making a doublet or dipole that fits the garden. Now this can be horizontal or it can be inverted V. It can be horizontal with the ends drop down. It really doesn't matter. The more wire you have out in the open, the better it is. But if you use 450 ohm ladder line right back to the radio room, radio shack, or whatever you like to call it, then you'll be able to operate that antenna on any frequency within the limitations of the size of the element that's actually the radiator. Now basically, as a rule of thumb, you can say, okay, well, if it's a half wave on 40 meters, it'll work on all the frequencies above that. If that element is a half wave on 40 meters, you'll probably find you can resonate it quite happily on 60 meters. I've certainly found that you can actually operate one of these doublets on frequencies lower than what the natural resonant frequency of the element would normally be. But the thing is that the length of that element is not critical. Make it as long as you can. So if, for example, you've got a garden which is, I don't know, let's say it's 70 foot long, then make the element 70 foot long. Don't worry about whether it's a half wave on 40 meters. Make it as long as you can. Ideally, you want to take that ladder line straight into the shack and into an ATU. You do need an antenna tuner. That's the one caveat with that system. You do need an ATU. The way I've always done it is to take the 450 ohm ladder line to the point of entry, then fasten a balun on the wall, and my little friend here, the MFJ balun, put that on the wall. Your 450 ohm ladder line goes on there, bit of coax comes out of there through the wall. Use some decent coax, use some RG213 or something like that, and then take that into your ATU. If you were to take your ladder line directly into the ATU, and the ATU had balanced input on it, it's going to have one of those baluns inside it anyway. So you're not going to lose anything by putting that balun on the outside wall. Yes, you'll have some SWR on that coax cable, but it's such a short length, you're not going to have any losses at all. You just need an ATU that will handle it. And as I say, the internal ATU of your transceiver probably won't handle it, well, certainly won't handle it on all bands, unless you've got a K3 or K3S. So you will need some form of external ATU. I think most people tend to look towards the auto ATUs these days because it's so quick, so rapid, and you haven't got to worry about making marks on the dial as to what the settings are. But anyway, whether it be manual or whether it be auto ATU, if you have that system, then you will have an antenna that will cover all bands. 450 ohm ladder line as far as you can towards the house, and then the final bit into a 4:1 balun, bit of coax through the wall into an ATU. into your transceiver. During the last few videos we've talked quite a bit about loading, mainly by inductance or by folding the part of the radiating element down into the 450 ladder line. So in other words, part of the antenna is formed by the 450 ohm ladder line, even though it doesn't radiate. But there is another way you can use this, and it's called linear loading. Basically, you can add a short section of 450 ohm ladder line anywhere along a dipole on either side. You'll see on the screen here an example of it, and bear in mind that if you were to add just 1 meter of 450 ohm ladder line on either side of a dipole, you'd actually reduce the whole size of that by approximately 4 meters. You do have to allow for the velocity factor, etc., but basically it gives you a rough idea. The other way is to use 450 ohm ladder line right at the feed point. You do need to add one extra bit of flex, but if you look at the drawing, you'll see how you do it. Basically, you've got a zigzag of cable folded back on itself using 450 ohm ladder line. Both these are quite good methods of adding extra length to the antenna, and they're not so frequency conscious. They're not so narrow banded as would be lumped inductance. So it's a good way of adding a bit of extra antenna length to the antenna simply by a bit of 450 ohm ladder line. So there we are. So that really does finish the series that I've done on antennas for small gardens in terms of horizontal antennas. What I'm going to do fairly shortly in the future is to talk about verticals, because a vertical antenna is the other option that you would probably want to consider if you had a small garden. Verticals are very interesting antennas, and there's some good possibilities there. Unfortunately, the weather at the moment is freezing cold outside, but when it gets a bit better, I'm going to do a series on vertical antennas and just show you how that may be the alternative answer for your small garden. In the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please press the subscribe button if you've enjoyed it, and as always, enjoy your ham radio. Thanks for joining me, and I'll be speaking to you shortly, I'm sure. Take care.